Errol Spence has to get approval from Stanionis to fight Keith Thurman. Alright, y'all, it's your boy, Cardinal Red. Let's talk about it. News came out today regarding the WBA champion, Eimantas Stanionis, and Errol Spence Jr. regarding the Keith Thurman fight. Now, according to this article, Errol Spence Jr. had paid Eimantas Stanionis step-aside money to fight Errol Spence last year. Now, according to the article, Eimantas Stanionis signed something and Errol Spence Jr. signed something stating that Eimantas Stanionis would be his next fight. And according to the article, once again, if Errol Spence doesn't fight Stanionis, that comes with all type of fines and stipulations. Now, I don't know if there's any stripping of belts that'll come along with that, because Errol Spence is the super WBA champion and Eimantas Stanionis is the regular WBA champion. And I didn't know they had already elevated him to champion. I thought that belt was actually still up in the air, that they were going to do a title eliminator for that belt. But apparently they've already elevated him to champion. So if Errol Spence actually wants to fight Keith Thurman next, he has to go to Eimantas Stanionis for permission to make that fight. Not only that, Errol Spence may have to pay Stanionis step-aside money once again to make the Thurman fight. So a lot of question marks regarding that Thurman fight of whether it will actually happen. Now, there are a lot of stipulations that come along with him not fighting Keith Thurman. The WBC title, to be exact, will be stripped from Errol Spence Jr. if he doesn't fight Thurman. But if he doesn't fight Stanionis, then he gets sanctioned by the WBA. I believe he gets fined. I believe there's something that he signed stating that Stanionis is guaranteed a fight with him next. So it's going to be interesting to see where Errol Spence goes with this. Now, if you read the article, Stanionis said he might step aside, he might not. He hasn't decided how he wants his career to pan out in 2023 yet. But what he did say is he used to be signed with PBC. He knows Al Haymon very well. His exact words were, Al Haymon and Errol Spence, they're stand-up people. I don't see there being a problem if I wanted to fight. I don't see there being a problem if I decided to step aside. Will he actually step aside? Will he decide like, hey, I'll take $500,000 or $1 million to step aside and you can go fight the Thurman fight, keep your WBC title, and we can move on from there. Perhaps Spence signs another agreement stating that he'll fight Stanionis after Keith Thurman. That way he can keep his titles unified and won't have to worry about being stripped or being regulated by the WBA for not honoring the contract he signed to allow Stanionis to be next after Ugas. Now, what does Errol Spence have to say about all of this? To be honest with you, I don't think it's really up to him to make the decision. I think it's up to Stanionis whether Stanionis feels like he can beat Spence, or the Spence fight will be his biggest fight of his career. It'll have him exposed to a whole new audience. He'll make a lot of money off of that fight. Or is he looking at the big picture? Okay, well, if I step aside now, allow Spence to fight Thurman. If he beats Thurman, then I can go in and try to fight Spence for all those titles. Because if Spence fights Stanionis first, he has to drop that WBC title, so it won't be on the line anyway when he fights Stanionis. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. Me personally, I believe that Errol Spence is going to fight Stanionis next. Even though Stanionis isn't signed with PBC, I do feel like Errol Spence is going to honor his word about Keith Thurman and the fact that Keith Thurman wouldn't give him a shot. I don't think Errol Spence is too much worried about the WBC title. He might be, there's a possibility he's like, I really want that Crawford fight. But here's the thing about that Crawford fight. If he fights Thurman and not Stanionis, that means he has to fight Stanionis next anyway. So either you're going to keep paying Stanionis step-aside money, or you're going to just go ahead and fight him. Because even if you do pay him step-aside money again, after the Thurman fight, you got to circle the block again and go back and try to fix that situation once again. So you might as well just get it over with. You're either going to fight him now or you're going to fight him 6 months from now. But that fight is going to happen. Eimantas Stanionis versus Errol Spence Jr. is going to happen unless Errol Spence Jr. does the latter of those things, which is drop all the titles and move to 154 pounds, which has been discussed a few times. You know, he hasn't made his decision or even voiced his opinion about that in a while. So I'm not sure how likely that is, but it sucks to be Errol Spence right now. He's the most popular guy in welterweight boxing. He's got the most options on his table, but none of those options are easy options or even what I would call good options because of the fact he could lose a lot of those fights. You know, the Boots fight, the Virgil fight, the Stanionis fight, even the Thurman fight, even though I think Thurman's over the hill now. But all of those fights are dangerous fights. None of them come with a huge payday. And Errol Spence has to pick one, or there will be ramifications and repercussions to go along with that. And the biggest ramifications and repercussions that could be handed out would be him getting stripped of the title, which I don't feel like that's fair. I actually feel like the WBA and the WBC would work something out and not strip him of the title if he decided to take on Eimantas Stanionis. I actually think the WBA and the WBC will work together on that one. And perhaps they pay Keith Thurman step-aside money. Now, that could be what actually happens. They could actually, since Keith Thurman is on PBC, Keith Thurman could get $1 million, $1.5 million to step aside and not honor his mandatory. That way, Spence can go ahead and fight Stanionis and won't have to face any of those ramifications for taking that fight. Thurman is signed to PBC, so it wouldn't be hard for Al Haymon to convince him, like, hey, this is what's good for both of you guys. I'll hook you up later. I'll get you this. I'll get you that. Perhaps get some a rematch with Pacquiao. So I don't know. It's a lot that could be made for Keith Thurman over the next year. But what we don't need is Errol Spence to be stripped of that title, because if he is stripped of that title and ends up fighting Stanionis next, let's say he fights Thurman and not Stanionis, well, then he has to fight Stanionis next anyway, so that means he can't fight Crawford next, so that takes the Crawford fight off the table. There won't be a Crawford fight in 2023, perhaps maybe until 2024. Plus, Terence Crawford has a mandatory in Virgil Ortiz anyway, so I don't think the Crawford fight is going to happen anytime soon. I definitely feel like Spence will make the best decision for himself and everyone involved. And I believe that Stanionis will be next and not Keith Thurman. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. Hit that like button for me. Share, subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. You're more than likely to get a response on the tube. Holler at me over there. And we are...
It's your boy Keith, neighborhood employee. Niggas knew that I was coming with fire. Y'all ain't up to my pie and up under a car. Your head under a tie, it's the S and the I. Player, we supposed to win. I'm in the booth focusing with coke in hand. Dude hate it when you see the chief running in. Ass mouth hurting like his wisdom teeth coming in. Now that's a roundhouse kick. Come round your house, letting rounds out quick. From Newburgh to downtown, it's that Midwest to down south shit. Y'all ain't fucking weed. She chillin', tryna put the feel on the mouth. What's good? She nothing, tryna show these niggas how to round.